Support for this program is provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and from viewers like you.
Hello and welcome to Louisiana Public Square. I'm Beth Courtney, president of LPB. Here with us tonight to revisit Louisiana's criminal justice reform is Bob Mann, a professor at LSU's Manship School of Mass Communications. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Beth. Well, it's been just over a year since Governor John Bel Edwards' criminal justice reform package passed the legislature with bipartisan support. The 10 bills expand parole opportunities, reduce sentencing lengths for certain crimes, and recalculate release dates for eligible state inmates. The measures were designed to address Louisiana's highest in the nation incarceration rate.
Well, the reforms seem to be showing signs of success. Oklahoma has unseated Louisiana as the country's imprisonment leader, and the reduced prison population has already saved Louisiana over $12 million. Some observers, though, say ex-offenders are leaving prison unprepared for reentry, and some high-profile politicians say inmates released early are threatening public safety. Well, we'll spend the next hour examining the criminal justice changes with a critical eye on revisiting reform. In June of last year, Governor John Bel Edwards signed the most comprehensive criminal justice reform in state history. 9 months later, State Attorney General Jeff Landry and U.S. Senator John Kennedy called the legislation a disaster in a jointly written column.
We're seeing some early release inmates committing some very violent crimes, some against children, and that's problematic.
Landry was not invited to be on the task force, which helped craft the reform package, and has been critical of the measures from the start. He says prisons should be seen as a deterrent, not a residence.
So instead of having that as our goal, we're saying, well, we got too many people in the home, we just need to get rid of them. That's not the proper way. What we want to do is we want laws in place that deter people from committing crime, and that when people do commit crime, we want to rehabilitate them so that they come back into society and they can function properly.
Landry and Kennedy are most critical of the administration's decision to rely on savings generated from the reforms to fund reentry programs, rather than investing that money at the start.
In Texas, that's what they did. They put the money on the front end, did the investments on the front end, were able to screen the inmates going into the program, put into place a very rigid process. Here it was like, here's the key, get out.
Texas is Texas. They have money. I mean, their streets are paved with gold. There are a lot of things they can do. There are other states that did not pre-invest. The Carolinas have had success with this. They didn't do any pre-investment.
Stephanie Regal is editor of the Baton Rouge Business Report and recently wrote a column defending the reform legislation. She says critics like Kennedy and Landry, both Republicans, considering a run against Edwards in 2019, have turned the reforms into a political football.
They've been highlighting two cases of alleged murders or attempted murders involving perpetrators who they say were let out of the system because of the Criminal Justice Reform Act. And that's just not true.
Regal points out that one of the offenders received early release in November, but was due out in April anyway. The alleged murder he was involved in happened in June.
The other fellow who was arrested, he had pled down. He had been pled down several times by the district attorneys. And so it wasn't really a result of criminal justice reform that he was out of jail. It was because of the charges that he had been jailed on, which were much less than what he perhaps should have been.
One legitimate criticism, Regal says, concerns how the state is handling the reentry of ex-offenders.
We're not doing enough yet to prepare these prisoners for reentry. It's been sort of slapdash, and there hasn't really been a holistic approach to training them and getting them ready. And that is going to be a big problem if the state doesn't get a handle on doing it the right way.
Louisiana is unique in that we house a little over half of our population at the local level.
Natalie Laborde is Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Department of Corrections. She notes that the majority of prisoners are released from local prisons, which don't receive rehabilitation funding. The Department of Corrections has been addressing this through jointly run regional reentry centers. These 9 facilities receive a per diem for housing prisoners, plus additional funds from the department to prepare inmates for reentry.
With those 9 facilities, we are only able to reach about 6,000 of the population, and we have roughly 15,000 at the local level. So even still, we're not getting to even half of those people.
Laborde says the savings created by the reforms will allow the department to invest in more partnerships with local jails. Since last year, a 7% reduction in Louisiana's prison population has already generated savings of $12.2 million. $8.5 million will be reinvested. 50% will be going to the Department of Corrections. 20% will finance crime victim services, and 30% will be awarded through grants to nonprofits providing rehabilitative services.
We are strategically targeting 5 parishes that generate roughly over 40% of our intake every year, and that'll be done through the form of an RFP process with community providers in those areas. The 5 parishes are Caddo, Orleans, Jefferson, St. Tammany, and East Baton Rouge.
In addition to the monetary savings, Laborde cites other reform achievements. More violent offenders are serving time than nonviolent offenders, putting Louisiana in line with its southern neighbors. A rearrest rate of 23%, well below the 44% national average. A reincarceration rate of 15%, same as over the last 10 years. And a decrease in the probation and parole caseload.
Prior to the criminal justice reform package, the probation and parole supervised population was around 72,000 people. And then a little over a year later, we're roughly at 65,000 people that are being supervised. And what that means is that the case officers individually can now focus in on those people who are high risk and need more supervision.
Laborde cautions critics and proponents alike to have patience, a sentiment echoed by Representative Terry Landry, who is serving on the council overseeing the reinvestment of savings from the criminal justice reforms.
Now, I had no expectation that this was going to be the cure-all to all of our problems, but I'm committed. I think the whole council is committed. I know the administration is committed to getting it right.
Well, helping us get our discussion right tonight is our studio audience. It includes district attorneys, business leaders, lawyers, former inmates, and representatives of organizations that help ex-offenders transition back into their communities. We also have 2 students from the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. Welcome, everyone. Glad you're here tonight. In January, the Justice Action Network conducted a national survey on criminal justice reform. Among its findings, asked if the main goal of the criminal justice system should be rehabilitating people to become productive citizens, 59% of those surveyed strongly agree, 29% agree, and 13% disagree. Asked if they favor replacing mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent offenders with options that allow judges sentencing flexibility, a total of 87% of respondents favor this approach, including 60% who strongly support this idea. Only 11% oppose. When asked whether money spent on imprisoning nonviolent offenders should be used on alternatives like electronic monitoring, community service, and probation, a total of 88% of those surveyed agree, including 59% who strongly agree. Only 11% disagree. And when questioned whether federal law should be changed so that government job applicants can explain their qualifications before a criminal background check, a total of 65% of respondents agree, including 34% who strongly agree. A total of 33% of those surveyed disagree. So let's start with your thoughts and our studio audience tonight on whether changes to Louisiana's criminal justice system are working, and if they're working, is there still room for improvement? So who wants to start? Hiller, would you like to start us off on that?
Sure. As district attorneys, we're very pleased to support criminal justice reform. It's way over needed here in the state and in the nation. We are right now hesitant to say that it's actually working, but we believe that it is. We believe there's a chance to work. There's going to always be a necessary tweaking of this. If you have the Titanic, where criminal justice reform is the furniture on the top. and we need to readjust that furniture, and we're doing it now. But it's the iceberg below. It's the race issue, it's poverty, it's education, it's all those things that create the environment that someone eventually gets to prison. That is the bigger problem that we have to attack and face. And this is going to take money. It's going to take individualized attention to people, and these people who are highly at risk. We need to really devote our time and money. And it's not only going to be money that's saved through reinvestment. The state and the people are going to have to really put up money on the front end in addition to any money that we save. And that's the only way we're going to really get it done. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we're behind reform.
So we're spending not enough money on some of the wrong things, even.
Well, no, I think we're spending money in the right direction, but there's such a bigger problem as to why are people getting in the position that they're in. And that's big problems, as I mentioned, as race, poverty, education.
Yeah.
A lot of big things that are creating this system that we're in.
Anybody want to talk about the poverty aspect that he's raising?
I'd just like to comment a little further on what Hillary is saying, and that is we realize that many of the concerns that he has as it relates to poverty and race and those things come into play. But I think that it's critically important that we concentrate on a solution that relates to getting people back reformed by allowing them in programs like work release and these kinds of things, because this gives them an opportunity to really reintegrate back into society. It's critically important that this happens. If we keep moving in the area of locking up folk and throwing away the key, that's going to just continue to have greater costs and greater consequences that are very negative on everybody's pocketbook in the state.
John, you have some experience in that. You want to share that with us?
Well, I have my experience is came out of Angola. I did 17 years. Got in work release. I did 3 years, and my goal is everything I learned from my mistake.
So you were early release.
Yes, early release. I learned from my mistake, and everything I do, I try to do it positive instead of negative. And Mr. Temple and Mr. Ben and Will and Miss Taneke, it's all my role model, and they keep me in focus on the right thing instead of the wrong thing. And I thank God for everything He did in my life. He changed my life around, and I'm focusing on the right path. Doing good, not staying out of trouble, paying my parole, probation fee, and then.
How long you been out?
I've been out a year.
Where do you work?
Construction.
Construction.
I work for
Okay.
Mr. Collins.
Good.
And I love my job, and I love what I do.
So, Gigi, you raised your hand. Is this is what you were envisioning when you began working on this?
Well, Bob, I got involved in this not through some humanitarian thought process in 2017. Here we live in a state where for the 4 or 5 years prior to that, we were cutting higher education and health care. That's the lifeblood of our future. And so I got involved because I felt as though here was an area we were spending $700 million. Public safety wasn't improving. We were overspending. We weren't getting our dollars worth. Hillary and I have had good conversations, but I feel like part of the iceberg they created. But I understand we've got to work together. The system wasn't working. So why not sit, try to figure it out? I agree, we could have spent money on the front end. We didn't have it to spend. You've got to start somewhere. Do I think that the initial releases were the right thing to do? I do. But I think there's so much more if we will sit down. I'm not afraid of the iceberg. I'm afraid that if we don't do something, we're going to run into a ditch that this state is not going to be able to recover from.
Jody, would you agree with what you've heard so far?
I believe it's still too early to tell. The initiatives that were put in place beginning last year, the consequences of those initiatives are still unfolding. And while we're hopeful that it will turn out well for all involved, for all parties, I think it's still too early to tell to declare it a success.
What will it take to, Bobby, I don't know if you agree, but what are you looking for to decide whether this is a success or not?
It's a success if we can safely reduce the prison population without endangering the public. Just because someone says the magic word of nonviolent offense doesn't mean there's not a victim out there. It doesn't mean that someone hasn't suffered a great deal. And so we may be releasing people, but are we protecting society? Are we protecting victims? Are we making victims whole to the extent possible?
Frederick, tell us a little bit about your story and how you see this
Well, my
this
name is
issue.
Frederick Thomas. I did 44 years in Angola. 44 years in Angola. I'm juvenile lifers, you know. I've been out and made parole last year with the help of the parole project. I'm doing good. I got a job working at the court. Gave me a raise. Thank God they gave me a second chance at life.
You're doing the most with your chance.
Doing the most of my chance.
Yeah.
Thank God for that. And the parole project, they're doing good for me.
Yeah.
So.
Keith, you want to?
Yeah, I was thinking about something that was said earlier, and that was the release mechanism that got us to this point. In my corrections career, which has now spanned well over 35, 40 years, I've seen at least 4 mechanisms identical to this. In 1990, we reduced the rate to 50%. A couple years ago, we did it to 46%, then 42%, and then this last year. In all of those reductions of good time release dates, this, in my opinion, was the best prepared I've ever seen. The probation and parole division was more on top of this and had resources deployed to assist in this release. And nobody got out more than, I think, 30, 40, 90 days early. This was not some wholesale release.
Verna?
I believe that the preparedness of, like you said, Keith, with the probation and parole was ready for the release of them coming out in the 60 to 90 days that they came out. It better prepare them, and I think it's better prepare the community also, and continue to make it a safe environment when they're being prepared and being locked up. Like Mr. Frederick, for 44 years, he needed a support team, and by working with Mr. Collins as a support mechanism, or with Keith as parole.
Remind us what you do.
One Touch Ministry, we house people coming out of prison, and we also do the support team because we find that best works for them to ease them into the community, and the community accepts them more friendly.
Yeah. Great. So that's all the time we have for this portion of our show. When we return, we'll be joined by a panel of experts as we revisit criminal justice reform. Welcome back to Louisiana Public Square. Tonight we're revisiting criminal justice reform passed just last year. Joining us now is our panel. Secretary Jimmy Leblanc has worked for the Louisiana Department of Public Safety and Corrections for more than 40 years. He believes that vocational and life skills training for offenders is one of the keys to ensuring public safety upon reentry. Pete Adams currently serves as the Executive Director of the Louisiana District Attorneys Association. Adams is a graduate of LSU Law School and was inducted into the Louisiana Justice Hall of Fame in 2014. Alana Odoms-Hebert is Executive Director of the ACLU of Louisiana. Her priorities are reducing mass incarceration and furthering racial justice. She served as staff counsel to the Justice Reinvestment Task Force, whose recommendations shaped the justice reform legislative package. Andrew Hunley was the first of Louisiana's juvenile lifers to be paroled following the Supreme Court decision striking down life sentences for juveniles. In 2016, after his release, he co-founded Louisiana Parole Project, which offers transitional assistance to ex-offenders. So before we go to our audience questions, I'd like to ask each one of you very briefly, how would you grade Louisiana's current criminal justice reforms? We'll start with you, Secretary LeBlanc.
Thank you. It's good to be here, and thank you guys for hosting this event. It's certainly something that needs to be publicly addressed. You know, success, and I think it's already been indicated by the group here that it's still too early, and if you look at our annual report that we did in June, there's a little box on an annual report that says, you know, it's still a little early to start projecting how successful it is. However, there's a couple of things that I would point to. One is that the carry forward of the reinvestment, I spent about an hour and a half, 2 hours in the Joint Legislative Budget Committee answering questions, comments, or from about 30 legislators, and ultimately there was no dissenting vote on that carry forward of funds of $8.4 million. And to me, that's success, and that's an indication, I think, for our state that we have a legislature on both sides of the aisle that are willing to take a look at that. The other is has already been indicated, our prison population is down by really 8,500 today, and our probation and parole population has actually gone down to 63,000 from 72,000, which Natalie indicated on her little video that our caseloads are down and from 145 to 139, allowing our agents to spend more time with those that need to be spending time with. Our intake is down, 1,200 last year, less people coming back to prison, less revocations in probation and parole. We've seen a lot of success in our community supervision. I think crime stats are going to give us a good indication, and we don't know what those look like at this point, but we will here in the next several months. We'll start seeing that. And look, this is all about public safety. This is about what we're trying to do for this state. And I think at this point that we can basically talk about it is successful so far, but we have a ways to go.
Mr. Adams?
I would grade the project so far as incomplete. And I want to remind everybody that we have a vested interest in this succeeding. We actually put green cards in for the package in the legislature. So we own its failure if it does in fact fail. But I say it's incomplete because there were really three goals, and they were roughly reduce incarceration, the population in prison, do it safely, and then the third part was to reinvest the savings to make sure that we reduce crime and recidivism. We certainly have started successfully on the first part, and that is, looks like we're saving some money and reducing some population. The safety part is still yet to be determined. We're less than a year out of the November 1 initial release date, and while the early numbers are pretty impressive, most of the recidivism studies done around the country are done in 3-year periods, and I think everybody here understands that. And so we won't really know the results. And a reason I talk about recidivism is because we were very concerned about victims throughout this whole thing. And, you know, it's hard to explain to the family of a murder victim that, you know, I'm sorry, but prison reform is working, you know. And again, we hope that there's not a lot of those out there, and we understand there will be some recidivism. But I think ultimately we'll know in 2 or 3 years whether this thing is overall a success. We're encouraged by the initial stuff, but I do understand the concern of those who are skeptical.
Ms. Aber?
I think I might be the eternal optimist on this panel because last year I said that I thought Louisiana was probably going to be voted the most improved if they were to be looked at on a grading scale, and I still believe that today. I think we have made so much progress over the last year in looking not just at our crime rates, which we don't have that statistic yet, but in looking at what we've saved and how we've been able to reinvest those dollars. $12.2 million far exceeds what we expected to save, and prior to that, we were not having the kind of money to be reinvested into community-based organizations. We didn't have funding for our reentry courts. We didn't have pathways back to work for our citizens. And all of those things are pluses, all of those things that did not exist before. We also had more than 60% of people being revoked from community supervision, which means that process wasn't working. We were not ensuring the success of people who are out on community supervision. And that figure has gone down also 20%. And so when you're looking at strengthening probation and parole, when you're looking at the measures that Pete Adams talked about, those measures, we're ticking those off and we're being very successful in all of those areas. So I'm a tough grader, so I wouldn't say we're at an A+, but as far as effort goes and as far as where we've come out on the indices that are important, we are succeeding, and we're succeeding in a very, very dramatic fashion.
Okay. Mr. Hunley.
Yeah, I have to give the reforms an A, and I don't say A+ because we have a ways to go. But I do say A because my organization has been on the ground working with individuals who were affected by the criminal justice reforms. For example, Frederick's in the audience today. Frederick's an individual who's been given a second chance thanks to the reforms. He's been out almost a year in that time. He's gotten a driver's license. He's gone through skills training. He's gotten a job, and since he's gotten that job, he's been promoted to supervisor on that job. So he's just an example of how these reforms are working. I think the most disappointing thing that are around these reforms is it seems like in some cases there are certain elements who are rooting against the reform to work, perhaps for political reasons. I think if we can all recognize, whether you're a liberal, conservative, a Democrat, or a Republican, prisoner reentry and criminal justice reform is an issue we can all get behind. For a long time, our state has been tough on crime, and I don't think that it's an exclusive thing to say that you can't be tough on crime and smart on crime. We can be tough on crime and smart on crime by ensuring individuals are not being incarcerated longer than they need to be, that we train them once they're incarcerated, that we give them opportunities upon release, and it's a successful formula. Each individual that has come through our program, we've had numerous individuals come through our program since the Justice Reinvestment Initiative. Not a single one of our clients have recidivated. It's a formula that works. If you reach people while they're incarcerated, improve their lives, and then continue that work upon release, the success is there to see.
Okay, thank you. Now it's time to go to our studio audience for questions to our panelists, and we're going to start with Jack, who's got a question for one or all of them.
Well, my name is Jack Harrison, and I'm a public defender in juvenile court. And I think most of the public doesn't know what happens in juvenile courts, and they don't know what's happening in the juvenile justice system. But over about the past 10 years, we've seen significant reforms in the juvenile justice system that have resulted in a real decrease, a significant decrease in the reliance on long-term incarceration as well as pretrial detention. While we've been reducing the reliance on incarceration and detention, we haven't seen increases in delinquency rates. We've seen delinquency rates either decline or remain, at worst, steady. How can these reform efforts and this history inform our criminal justice reform efforts?
Jack, I'm really happy that you bring up the paradigm of what happens with our children. Number one, I think it's important for folks to know about the great capacity of children to change and to grow and to develop, and that's why it is very important. The Supreme Court has said it. It's been enacted in our new law that addressed juvenile life without parole, that you must in fact give young people an opportunity to be able to be rehabilitated because they in fact have the most delta, the most change to be able to experience. And so one of the things that I love about the reform and the savings that we're going to experience is in our second year, there will be a percentage of the reinvestment funds that will be going directly into our juvenile justice system to help support our children. Because in the same way that adults can benefit from an opportunity at release, an opportunity to get counseling and services, an opportunity to get occupational license and opportunities to succeed in life, our children benefit from that tenfold. And I think that's what you're talking about.
We are investing next year in OJJ. I think that's important for everybody to understand. And as we met as a task force, that was, juvenile justice certainly was a big part of that conversation. And we realize how important it is. I think there are a lot of things that we can do. Dr. Bush is, I think, doing a well of a job. Bringing on the Bunkie facility, I think, that $4 million actually was taken from corrections and added to OJJ, so we can begin to open that facility, which I think will be a step in the right direction.
I'd like to mention whenever I was 15 years old, I went to prison. And there may be some people in this room that would have said I was the worst of the worst and wouldn't be able to turn my life around. Luckily, I received a lot of opportunities while I was incarcerated to rehabilitate myself, to educate myself. I turned my life around. I'm not an exception to the rule. I'm an example of what can happen when there's good policy in place and where there's an opportunity for change and an opportunity for second chances. So I think what's really important for us as a state to look at moving forward, we give a lot of indeterminate sentences. We send people to prison and forget about them, and especially young people. How can we remain invested in young people, not throw them away, and be able to look at them and give them a review at some point to see if they're worth that second chance.
Alexandra, how about a question from you?
I'm Alexandra Thibodeau, representing the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. So I know you had mentioned that it was a little bit too soon to kind of judge the act on its functionality. But where do you see it going in the next few years? And then also, is there anything, and also it's too soon to add, to probably propose revisions, but is there anything that you personally would add to it?
I think a lot depends on the community investment side and what we do on the DOC side with investment as we look at moving this down the road. And we don't have enough time tonight to really get into a lot of the detail of what we're doing, but to give you an example of what we're doing for Orleans and Jefferson and we'll do for East Baton Rouge. And Hillard and I have had this conversation about consolidating where we're housing offenders at the local level. That part needs to be emphasized, that we 80% of our discharges, 80% of 15,000 people are discharging out of our local facilities at $24.39 a day, and that may not mean much to the people out there, but that's enough just to lock and feed. And that's not anybody's fault. We have grown into that system that needs to be changed. How we change that is regional reentry centers that was talked about in the prelude to this. But in addition to that, what we do, our first initiative is in Orleans and Jefferson, 5 parishes that we're concentrating on. Orleans and Jefferson are the first 2. Last 2 years of your incarceration will be in Plaquemines Parish before you go back to Orleans and Jefferson. There's a fine facility there, $130 million facility, and we'll house them there. We'll increase the amount of money going into that facility by about $1.4 million of the investment, and that's cost reimbursement. That's not an increase in per diem. That's for teachers, vocational programs, living in balance, substance abuse, mental health, just like a state prison. So before you go back to Orleans and Jefferson, you will have 2 years in that facility. And the same thing will happen for East Baton Rouge, the same thing will happen for St. Tammany, and the same thing for Caddo. We're going to concentrate. Well, give you an example. If last year we looked at how many people came back to East Baton Rouge Parish, it was 1,700 people from 98 different jails. Tell me that doesn't need organization. So that's the future. We have got to organize ourselves at the local level. I firmly believe, and I'm taking too much time, I know, I firmly believe that the way we house people at the local level and the revocation rate, which has already been talked about, 60% of our intake, is a driver of our highest incarceration rate used to be in the world.
I believe that there's room for expansion. I think there is. I think the feasibility of expansion is going to depend upon the success of this thing over the next 2 or 3 years. I think that, first of all, crime rates have been going down all across the country. They were going down in Louisiana before we did this, and they will continue to go down unless other factors change. This is not the but-for on reducing crime rate. I think the success of this program is going to be judged on whether these releases increase the danger to public safety. And we're going to know that later on, because quite frankly, a recidivist, a reoffender, cost in real cost to local government, retrying, to victimization, and to communities, it costs about 7 times what it costs to house a prisoner for a year. About 7 times, okay? That's in an Illinois study. Now, Illinois may be more expensive than us, but even if it's 3 times, it's frightening. And I think after 3 years, if we reinvest, like Jimmy says, if we reinvest and we do it right, I think we can keep people from recidivating. At least we can keep it to a minimum, and then there'll be room for expansion. But if this thing blows up, it's going to be hard to expand on it. It really will be.
the notion of there being some kind of blow up or disaster, I really don't think that is the way to characterize what we're experiencing. And I'm glad you're hopeful about that. But I think what we really want to think about is we've all been sold a bill of goods. We've all been told that an eye for an eye is the way that our society should run. We've all been told that if you simply remove someone from society and you put them, you lock them away, that will make us safe. And that is not true. What the research has shown is that when you lock someone up and you throw away the key and you do a strategic disinvestment from them, 95% of those people are coming home. And those people came home, and those people hurt other people. And so when we put services in place, when we put counseling in place, when we put the kinds of opportunities in place for people, that's what diminishes that. So that's why I feel hopeful about where we're going and that we're going to avert any kind of disaster, because where we were was a disaster. We're moving from a place of disaster to a place of hope. And I think that's what all of us are here really excited about, because we all want to live in a safe society together.
We can talk in banalities, and we can have generalities, and we can have some excellent metaphors, and I appreciate all of that. But what worries me about the program, and the thing that I want to know that we're starting now is not later, is where the nuts and the bolts and the screws and the pegs are going to go into this thing, and what we're doing now. We can say, oh, it's too early to tell. Well, that's great. But with just a modicum of research, you can see the Bard University project in New York, if any of you are familiar with it, where you're worried about recidivism. The recidivism rate is extremely low for participants and even lower for graduates. Their prisoners are getting out in New York. It's funded by the Rand Corporation, as I recall. And the end result is you have prisoners with low recidivism rates that are being treated like people instead of punishment. We're actually looking at persons. And the end result, they're leaving the institution with a college degree. And so we can have all these generalities, but what are we doing? What are the nuts and the bolts? Why would we want to wait another year? What all of you are saying is probably true, and the other statistics. I even looked at statistics from Norway.
Well, let me throw that question to them, Walter. So, are we moving fast enough? Are we moving at the right pace?
Well, I mean, the education side of this, we're currently in our state prison system, and at a minimum level in our jails, is that we do have college courses, and we do have Ashland University and Wiley College that provides online education, and in fact, I attended a graduation at Hunt. I think there was around 30 graduates at Hunt Correctional Center, and some of them getting their associate degrees and so forth. So we are doing some of that in our state prisons. You have to, in moving forward with this, it takes a little time and effort. It's been decades since we've done it, and we're turning this ship around, but we want to meticulously turn it around. We want to do it right. The things that he's mentioning is in the process of being developed at the local level. Our state prisons, we are going to expand educational services in regards to Ashland University. We have what we call ATLO units that we're going to expand the units, spend more time in class and evening times paying officers overtime to expand those operations in our state prisons. But look, where we have to concentrate is in our local jails. We have a Tiger tool, which is a risk needs responsivity tool that's been developed through LSU. We spent probably in the neighborhood of $1 million grant money to develop this tool, which is going to be one of the best in the country. It is actually being tested as we speak. It's in a production mode. We hope that judges with smart incarceration, that we would use this on the front end so individual sentencing will take place versus just one size fits all. And I think if we can direct people in the right place for the resources that they need, then we can do a better job at that. And that tool is so important for us in sentencing people. And we'll do the Tiger tool when they get to us. We've opened another reception center at Raymond Laborde in Avoyelles, where now anybody that is sentenced in Orleans, Jefferson, Caddo, St. Tammany, or East Baton Rouge will go through a reception process. They will go on. If you got convicted in East Baton Rouge to DOC time, you go pretty much straight to Catahoula and do your time up there in a parish jail, and then dropped off back in East Baton Rouge Parish. Recipe for disaster. I'm not directly answering this question, but we are doing a lot. You know, literacy, GED, we're doing a lot of those kind of things already. That needs to be expanded, and that's part of what the investment will be. But again, more expansion at the local level than at the state prison level.
Do you all agree there's a direct relationship between poverty and lack of education?
Oh, definitely. I mean,
before we move on, explain what a Tiger tool is.
It's a risk needs assessment tool. I think it's 65 questions. It takes about 15 minutes, and it basically spells out the risks, the needs, and how do you respond to those needs. That's what it's about, and that's what we have to have. We have it, and like I said, we have it developed, and it's in the process of being implemented statewide in our system.
It's an aptitude tool.
Yeah, I mean,
aptitude tool to determine where a person's strengths and weaknesses are so they can move forward. When you talk about nuts and bolts, the key to this whole thing as it relates to the nuts and bolts piece that you asked the question about, it really all starts at the leadership. And when you talk about a governor who has bought in to wanting to make this reform work, when you talk about a 40-year person who's been in the correction system, he understands what and why things will work and won't work. And so it's critically important that we understand that we need to be patient about it and that we need to move forward. And if the leadership is moving towards reform, if the leadership is moving towards getting sheriffs to understand that as they work release programs, they're not working prisons, they're working work release. So as you get those kinds of mindsets moving in the right direction, you can have a healthy reform process. That's just
and if I could real quickly add that in the next 30 days you will be hearing a lot more about where we're headed. I mean, I think we're going to be ready to make announcements. We have an oversight group that we will meet with between now and that time, and then we'll come out with the plan of action for our state in all three compartments: the victim compartment, the DOC compartment, and the community compartment. You will see where those investments are going and why and for what.
I want to pick up on something that maybe Carlos didn't mean to allude to, but when he said, we talked about the governor, it reminded me that we got a governor's race coming up next year, and there's a lot of external voices potentially in this governor's race. Are any of you worried that the politics of the upcoming governor's race and some of the candidates who may potentially be running for governor, who are very much opposed to these reforms, are going to slow it down or cause the legislature to even back off? Or do you think that you can sustain these?
Oh, I don't think there's any question we can sustain it. I'm
politically.
Well, I mean, politically it needs to be done, and I think the governor understands that, and we have to move forward with this. This is, and as Pete said, they put green cards on all 10 pieces of this legislation. The DA's
the green card is
I'm for this legislation. Right. They could have sat out and not done anything or been against, right. But they put a green card in, and look, that. I think the bipartisanship here it should go away.
The partisanship.
The partisanship. Yeah, it's so. I'm not into politics really, but I can tell you that our state has a good thing moving forward with this criminal justice reform, and I don't know how another candidate can argue this point. They just need to read the stats and sit down with us and let us help them understand. The criticism that I've never met either one of those individuals. They've never talked to me or called me or wanted to talk about it. If they do, let's have a discussion. Let's sit down and talk about it, and let's explain what we're trying to do. And as I don't know how people can be against this.
Are y'all worried about the politics of this?
So I'll say this. I think the governor demonstrated a lot of courage in pushing this forward during his first term in his administration. But I want to remind folks that HCR 82, which was the House concurrent resolution that created the task force, preceded the governor's administration. So this actually was not, it's oftentimes known as the governor's task force, but this was in fact an interbranch task force that was created with the support and partnership of all branches of government. And the governor simply had the courage to be able to articulate the problem and galvanize the legislature with the political will to get it passed. I'll also state that this package of reforms was supported predominantly by Republicans. So the bill sponsors were predominantly Republican, one independent, and also Democrats. The task force itself, 14 people who came from district attorney backgrounds, came from defense backgrounds, came from law enforcement backgrounds. You saw Representative Terry Landry on the earlier video package, the faith-based community. The reason why we experienced such great success in the passage of this was because it was broadly supported, and bipartisan support. And so what we realize is when we do things together, when we can find shared value, when we can find common ground and work together, we can in fact solve incredibly difficult problems, and we can continue to address the issues that we need to address. And I believe that the candidate who can most clearly articulate that shared vision, that shared goal going forward, is the person who will garner the support of Louisianians.
I'm hopeful, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat in our state, you can agree that long-term our vision should be to spend less money on prisons and more money on education so we can eliminate the prison pipeline that exists, especially in our socioeconomically disadvantaged communities. These reforms are really common sense, and that's why they had broad bipartisan support. Whether it's Governor John Bel Edwards or someone else is our next governor, no matter who's in our next legislature, hopefully they'll allow these reforms to continue in a smart bipartisan manner because it makes a lot of sense for us to change the way we've been doing things.
We're almost out of time tonight, and I want to get the one person who hasn't had a chance to get her question, and that's Emily. So Emily, you want to throw a question to this panel?
Okay, well, I think my initial question was answered concerning mental health outreach. So I think I often keep hearing the idea of moving the conversation forward and taking action. So my question is, what are some things that we could do, especially as youth, a part of the Louisiana Youth Advisory Council, and just like communities in general? Like, what are some things that we can do to continue to move this conversation forward and take action now for reform?
Good question.
Very good question.
You need to fund OJJ. You need
OJJ
to fund
is?
the Office of Juvenile Justice. You need to fund that. When juvenile justice reform was first implemented in 2003, there were promises of things very much like we're being promised now. The money never was forthcoming. I think you properly fund OJJ, you rehabilitate those people who are subject to change. They are malleable at that point in time. And if we can do a good job of that, we're going to reduce crime, we're going to reduce incarceration. And on that end, that is pretty easy. You just need to fund it in a smart way.
I think what you can do, young folks, Alexandra and Emily, is that you can vote and you can encourage young people who are your colleagues to vote. We have one of the most historic ballot initiatives coming up on November 6th, and it is to change the very draconian rule of non-unanimous juries. You can be convicted and spend the rest of your life in prison in Louisiana on a ballot, a jury ballot that is 10-2. And we are one of the only states, we are the only state in the country where you can spend life in prison being convicted by a split jury. We are one of 2 states where this practice still occurs. And so young people need to understand that voting is such a central part of your engagement in our society. And if you don't know what to do, you can vote and you can look to your elected officials to see if they represent the values that you share with your other colleagues. If you believe in fairness, if you believe in justice, if you believe in these kinds of reforms, vote someone and vote for someone who believes that, and do not allow someone who doesn't hold those same values to go into office. And apathy is the biggest disaster that we can all have. We all need to be invested and we all need to be active and vote for the rights that we know are on the line, because our rights are dependent on whether or not we vote. And so I think that's one of the most important things that young people and all people in the state can do.
Okay, so that is as much time as we have today for our questions from our studio audience, and I want to give everybody a chance to offer some closing comments before we wrap this up. Secretary Leblanc, would you like to begin?
Yeah, again, I thank LPB for doing this and appreciate the opportunity to bring this subject forward. You know, I think that the big thing for us is to give this some time. As I said earlier, I think you'll hear a lot more, the public will hear a lot more about where we headed in the next 30 days or so. And give us time. I mean, we have to be patient. And a little bit about what the young lady asked, we have reentry coalitions that we're developing in each parish that we're working in right now, which is the 5 parishes that I mentioned earlier, but we move on to 10 more after that, which catches the Lafayettes, the Monroes, the Lake Charles, that you can get involved in, and you can get, you know, community involvement. That's so important for our state. The people get involved, be committed to what we're trying to do, get involved and learn what we're trying to accomplish in our state. And I look forward to implementing this in partnership with the law enforcement, with the DAs, with the judges. I go down to New Orleans tomorrow to meet with the judges liaison, to meet with a group down there, and then I go down and meet with Plaquemines Parish after that to talk about the reinvestment part of this. So I'll spend the next 5 or 6 months in working the operation in the full force. So I'm looking forward to that.
From the standpoint of the district attorneys, we really hope this works, because if it doesn't work, our jobs are going to be very, very difficult. And I think a lot of people have broken hearts, including a lot of potential victims, and also a lot of people who could have been rehabilitated. And the only way it's going to work is if we fulfill that promise of reinvesting. The legislature has not been awfully consistent about fulfilling their promises on funding matters, and a lot of that is out of their hands. But hopefully they'll make this a priority and reinvest the money and safely rehabilitate people, and this thing will work and we'll all celebrate.
I think we should not undo with anecdote what we accomplished with data-driven results. What Justice Reinvestment was a data-driven analysis of the drivers of incarceration in Louisiana. And a lot of what we hear that is critical of what we've done is based on fear, and it is based on anecdote. And so we need to allow the process to work, because we are not outliers in this sense, that we are the 35th or 36th state that has gone through the Justice Reinvestment process. This is not a case of first impression for Louisiana. We are following a blueprint for success where other states have experienced reduction in crime and in prison population, and also increased safety while saving taxpayer dollars. So we need to stay invested, we need to stay committed, and we need to work together. I think what you've heard, and the beauty of what this process has been for us for the last 3 years, if not even 4 years, is that we've had to sit down together and have tough conversations. We've had to think across the aisle, Republican and Democrat. We've had to talk about hard issues, about race, about the fact that this criminal justice system disproportionately impacts people of color, young people, brown people, poor people, people with mental health, people with disability. We've had those conversations among this panel and among the community. But when you talk about those hard issues, and everyone is there with an earnest heart trying to really work towards success, that's how we make improvements together. And I'm very hopeful about where we're going.
Prisoner reentry is very important. As a businessman once told me, it's an opportunity for us to turn tax burdens into taxpayers. So in the reentry work that my organization does, it's something we focused on every day, ensuring that barriers are removed so people can be successful. I've found that if you remove those barriers, there's no reason why someone isn't successful and why someone doesn't ultimately become a success story. But one of the most important things that we can do is ensure that individuals have an opportunity for employment after release. So I think that any opportunity we get to allow people to get employment post-release, and that's one barrier we can remove. And I would encourage those who can hire someone who's formerly incarcerated, give them that second chance, give them that opportunity to be a loyal employee.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've run out of time for our question and answer segment, and we'd like to thank our panelists, Secretary Leblanc, Mr. Adams, Ms. Hebert, and Mr. Hundley for their insight on this month's topic. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments. Well, that's all the time we have for this edition of Louisiana Public Square. We encourage you to visit our website at lpb.org/public square. And while you're there, click on our Facebook or Twitter links to comment on tonight's show, and we'd love to hear from you. Since 2001, over 2 million Americans have been deployed to support operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. 26% of Louisiana's veterans fought in these conflicts. Next month, Louisiana Public Square explores the unique state programs and initiatives that are helping these younger soldiers successfully transition back to civilian life. Catch us then, and thanks for joining us tonight. Good night.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org.